Hello everyone and welcome to Shelf Space. I'm your host Ross13 and today we are looking at the Master Grade F09IIIY Cluster Gundam. The classic Gundam from the series, hold on a sec. What even is this thing from? There it is. Okay. That's it? So yeah, this guy was part of a spin-off side story from F91 called Silhouette Formula 91, basically the MSV series for F91. This was made back in the 90s and was some model kits and a couple of manga series. This was one of several F90 units that were made and was designed around using a core block system just like the Gundams of old. It was also designed with several hardpoints all over its frame so it can use what I like to call the A to Z mission packs. In fact, the Y designation on this guy is for the core block setup. It stands for Young Star, which, heck if I know what they were going for on that. Let's get this guy off the turntable and get a closer look. So right now I just have him in a basic loadout, and I guess I should also mention that I do have almost all of his water slide decals on, as well as a nice matte top coat to just sort of even everything out. And I'm fairly happy with how this thing came out. It feels very 90s in all the best possible ways, at least in my opinion. And it's just a really neat looking design. I particularly like this beam shield that it's got going. It's just very, very cool. I love the giant translucent green pieces, and yeah, awesome stuff. You can see back here we have a sort of beam bazooka thing attached to its back skirt. You can also see the giant wings and backpack from the sort of core booster part that it has. Yeah, just overall it is a very interesting design, very much of its time, but I have trouble wanting to hate on that. This thing is just really, really cool looking. But let's show off one of its main gimmicks. As I mentioned before, this thing uses a core block system just like the old Gundams did. And the way this is done is with a core fighter that is wedged into the back, kind of like the core landers on the mobile fighters in G Gundam. And you can see, just fold the nose up and then flip out to the little wings. And here we are. Very, very detailed. Oh, wait. Let's not forget the little tail fin. And I kind of love this thing. It is very tiny, but it's got a lot of personality to it, and just I'm also pretty proud of how it came out. There's some scratches and stuff on here that I need to touch up. I even painted the little white crossbars and stuff like that. Also, I painted the tail fin here because they did originally have a sticker that folded over here, and that was trash. It was not good. There is a space for a pilot figure, which I have not painted yet. I am going to paint it, but I can't find any full color pictures of his pilot, so I'm figuring that out and will put it in later. But yeah, the really cool part though is sort of the core booster form. So the backpack just attaches to it, and then you fold the wings down. And just look at this thing. It is simply beautiful. I absolutely love the colors on this. It has some giant water slide red decals, but it looked even pretty good without them. I just decided to kind of go whole hog on everything. These ones were kind of a nightmare because, again, it's a fold over sticker thing, but this time it's a water slide. But again, it looks really good, and I'm pretty proud of how it came out. Another neat thing that they've done is The inside of the thruster bells are done with yellow plastic, so you get a lot of extra detail there. The color separation and part separation on this kit is phenomenal, which makes sense because it is a modern master grade kit. In fact, I love this thing so much that I'm actually not going to display this inside the Cluster Gundam. I spent so much time and effort on this thing, it seems like a waste to kind of shove it into the back there. So I'm actually going to have this thing out separately when I display it. But fortunately, there is a solution for that, so that way you just don't have a Gundam with nothing back there. They included an alternate backpack for this guy that just plugs in like so. The only downside is you do have to take the beam sabers off this guy to put them on there. And there are beam saber effect parts, I just haven't clipped them out because I don't plan on using them. Here's a closer look at the shield, and like I said before, I just absolutely love the bright green neon plastic bits on here. Just looks so freaking cool. But if you want, you can actually take these off, and these actually fold down and around the arm, so you can display it like this, which looks pretty good, and it makes it feel like a sort of earlier incarnation of what we see in the F91, where the F91 has a little bitty thing that becomes a big beam shield, and so this one is obviously a earlier take on that that's a lot more bulky. Now, I do wish this thing sat a little bit more flush, but the shape of the arm kind of prevents that. I also wish that the peg on this thing was just a little bit longer because it feels like it might come off. It really hasn't, but it's one of those things that makes me worry a little bit. Another accessory we have is this bazooka that looks pretty darn cool. It does have a fold-out handle, and these bits right here are for when you hook it up to the back of the skirt armor. You can also use an included clip thing over it and attach it to hard points that are on the side skirt, but I tried that out and I was thinking that was going to be my way of doing this, and it doesn't look good to me. It just doesn't. You actually have two of them, but since I'm only displaying one on the back skirt, I don't really have a need for it, so it's going in a baggie. That does bring me to an issue that I have with this kit. So this is the little bag that has like the extras for that I may want to use later or something like that, as well as the stickers. So like there's the beam effect parts, there's the pilot figure, we got landing gear for the core fighter, the little clip-on things, some extra bits for the hands, but we also have all this. So because this thing is based off of the original Master Grade F90, there are a lot of pieces for the F90 that just weren't used. A lot of the inner frame for the legs and hands and stuff like that is completely different. So you have a bunch of extra parts. You also have a whole lot of extra parts for combining it with the other mission packs, which it's really cool that you have that, but if having a lot of extra plastic is something that's going to bug you, I imagine this will really bug you. But enough negative stuff. Let's go back to the figure and take a look at articulation. Being a modern master grade, the articulation on this guy is actually pretty decent. Shoulder rotates around, can even go up, and you got your standard arm joints there. You do have to be a little careful though, because the shoulder does like to try to pop out of socket just like that. Remember folks, this is a model kit, not an action figure. You have a ball joint, I believe, for waist. though not a whole lot of like ab crunch or anything fancy like that, which makes sense because you got the entire core block system, so that takes up there. There is a system that opens this up for accessing the cockpit, but it was a pain in the butt for me to mess with when I was assembling this thing, so I'm not going to deal with that. I have enough stress in my life. The legs are pretty decent with nice bend there. Back skirt does not move, but front skirt does move. In fact, the front skirt has an entire system for moving that helps allow like the entire hip assembly to move forward for some really extreme poses. Let's see if I can get it to, if I can show that off here. Yeah, like that. And then you got ankle articulation. Not a whole lot of back movement, which is kind of weird, but it is what it is. And some nice side-to-side movement there. So you can get this guy in some pretty decent poses. I just wish that the toes could go back a little bit more so we could get some really decent flying poses, because that's how I'm going to display this guy. Speaking of which, this little piece sticking out here, that is the adapter for the action base, which let's go ahead and get this guy on an action base so we can see what that's like. And here it is on an action base in all its glory. And this just looks so cool. As you can see, I added an extra armature there for the core booster, and I just absolutely love this setup. This is a very, very cool kit. The main things that hold it back are, one, that it has a whole bunch of extra pieces, which doesn't bother me much, but I'm sure that's going to bother some people. And it is a P-Bandai kit, which means getting it is going to be somewhat difficult unless you have really good channels for that kind of stuff. I was able to get it when the initial pre-orders came out, and I'm sure it's going to be around and reprinted later, but not everybody's going to have access to this thing, and that's a shame because it is such a fun design and a really interesting build. And to be honest, this thing has actually inspired me to want to build more master grades. So I have a few of those in my backlog, and I'm going to start getting them together, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, that has been a review. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for supporting. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And I'll see all of you the next time you invade my shelf space.